Oh, hey there. Remember this community post? Well, it's out now. Yeah, so as a little quick update, I have a Discord server now. I've been working really hard on it, and I think you're gonna like it. Link is in the description, and I hope to see you there. Cuphead is a great, no, fantastic video game, and I think you should all play it. Shut up, Danerade, it's too hard! So Cuphead was released in 2017 by Studio MDHR for the Xbox One and Windows platform, and later down the line would be ported to Mac and the Nintendo Switch. I got this game originally on Windows and later down the line for my Switch. So here is my review of Cuphead. Don't deal with the devil.
Well, Cuphead and his pal Mugman, they like to roll the dice. By chance they came on Devil's Game, and gosh, they paid the price. Paid the price.
In the small little island of Inkwell Isle, we find our two little heroes, Cuphead and Mugman, enjoying themselves until they stumble onto the Devil's Casino. They walk right in, and just like annoying, bratty, selfish teenagers who don't know any better, they gamble away and are doing pretty well. The devil notices their success and gives them one chance to own all of the riches in the casino with one dice roll. If they lose, however, the devil will take their souls. Cuphead gambles away while Mugman hesitates and becomes scared on what's to come.
Good gosh, Cuphead, no! Cried Mugman, for he understood the danger, but alas, it was too late!
Cuphead, of course, loses, but they come up with a deal so that they collect all of the other souls the devil supposedly owns over. So our heroes go out to collect all of the soul contracts in Inkwell Isle. I like this story since it gives off some of the dark, depressing feelings of the 1920s and the 1930s, with all of the references to gambling and alcohol. I also like what they did with Mugman and how they gave him a Luigi-esque role.
Mugman's character came from the desire of a two-player dynamic. Being the younger brother, Jared said he always identified as Luigi, and they wanted to give off a Mario Brothers vibe with the duo.
Oh yeah, and have you noticed something? This game looks amazing! You see, from a quality writing perspective, I should do some research and explain this art style of animation and how it's called rubber hose animation, which was popular in the 20s and 40s, and was eventually phased out with more realistic movements by the Walt Disney Company, with films such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This animation style was popularized by the Fleischer brothers until their business went bankrupt later on because Disney just became way more successful. Yeah, I probably should have explained that, but clearly this is not quality. I mean, it's not like you guys subscribe for this type of quality content. Hey, fake news, your banner says quality content. How can you lie to us? This game is an impressive feat in not only animation alone, but video games as well. I could go on for a long time, but I think the visuals speak for themselves. The gameplay is very reminiscent of other games from the late 80s and early 90s, such as Contra and Gunstar Heroes, as in the bullet hell level design. Cuphead at its core though is a boss rush gauntlet, similar to Mega Man's system, where you usually have a selection of bosses to choose from at one time. There are 3 types of stages in Cuphead: boss ground levels, boss airplane levels, and standard get to the finish in line of Super Mario Bros. Let's quickly go over that last one, which I feel as though are the weakest part of the game. Not because they are inherently bad per se, but the game was clearly designed with the boss rush levels in mind. They're harmless, but nothing truly to really write home about in my opinion. Now the ground boss stages are where things start to get interesting. We have a collection of bosses our brothers have to fight off against, including but not limited to Psychopathic Flower, Dragon Quest Slime Rip-Off, the cousin of the dragon from Mario Odyssey, Captain Flint from Treasure Island. Haha, you're such a nerd, Dave, you read books! Queen Bee from Kirby Triple Deluxe, Mega Mind but in bird form, Robin Williams, And a goat. Yeah, it's a goat. These dastardly foes are all crazy unique in their designs and attacks. Even the smallest of things, like Robin Williams in his chest, had multiple revisions. Every single little detail needed to be considered in some way or another. You might have also noticed that Cuphead was not always on the ground and he was in a plane in some of this footage, reminiscent of the plane stages in Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. Well, these are those plane stages I alluded to earlier. In these stages, you will be in flight at all times and have two weapons at your arsenal, a standard machine gun weapon and a bomb weapon that has a big drop off. The game makes you switch between them, as bosses in certain circumstances are much easier with either one or the other. Speaking of weapons, you have 6 you can choose from. You have any from a close range spread shot to a boomerang roundabout. And Studio MDHR did a fantastic job indirectly forcing you to mix and match weapons, as some bosses are way easier with one weapon, while the next boss requires a whole other combination. And that's because this game is hard. This game is a test of your endurance, and you feel it. Beating a boss makes you want to dance around the whole room. It's great. And from an inspiration standpoint, this makes sense, as Jared and Chad Moldenhauer, creators of the game, expressed their love for the early unnecessarily difficult games they grew up with in the NES era, though the game pulls it off way better than like 95% of the games in the arcade/NES era. I've heard many complain that the game does not accommodate for newbies and that the game's simple mode is lacking, and while I won't argue with the latter, I don't believe that a game should have to baby its player. We don't need a Navi who has to remind you every 5 seconds on how to press the A button. The creators clearly knew their target demographic, and they did it wonderfully. So before we end off, I really want to illustrate the work that has gone into this game. Yeah, no duh, the visuals I hear you saying, but just more than that. Even something as small as localization. The team went out of their way to produce quality translations for different countries when creating the Nintendo Switch port.
Yeah, we put a little extra love into it to make sure that we did original font work, kind of how we did for the whole game.
You can play it in English too.
You can.
Yeah.
And many other languages.
Speaking of the Switch port, it's amazing. I'm not going to necessarily say that other indies don't put in the same work, but some other indie games that get ported usually don't warrant the same great perfect results as Cuphead. Take for instance A Hat in Time, which sometimes the frame rate dips and some of the loading screen images are really low res. Cuphead runs at a beautiful 60 frames per second with no dips whatsoever, and there were no substantial compromises made. And in addition, when porting the game, they added little bonuses to make the game much more polished, like transforming the cutscenes to be more animated, or allowing you to play as Cuphead or Mugman and solo play. Cuphead is a modern masterpiece in that it reintroduces the old but does not overly rely on it. The references or gameplay homages are just that, references. Cuphead is an amazing game that stands on its own loud and proud, and I don't see this game aging anytime soon. Props to Studio MDHR for taking the time to polish out their game. This is one of my favorite games of all time, and I can understand if one thing or another is something you may not like necessarily. You might think that the gameplay is repetitive, or you're not a very experienced gamer. And to that I say, get good. Hey, thank you for watching my review of Cuphead. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.